Happy Sunday, Lion Golf Academy members. Hope everybody is doing well. I hit the wrong button and I started the 5 minute countdown. So forgive me. I'm just a golf pro. We got a big show today. We got four amateurs to look at, a couple submissions, and I scoured Reddit and found a couple that I think would be really good for educational purposes. So hopefully they are on the chat. And let me pull up the chat here. If you are one of these students and you want to let me know some feedback as we're going through, just let me know. If you're not one of these students and you want to just ask questions, go ahead. I will do my best job today to look over at the chats. I'm getting better at that every week. How about that President's Cup? It was going to look pretty close after first couple of days, but the Americans pulled it off. So let's get started today. And if you are new to this channel and you like this type of stuff about learning cause and effect, go ahead, hit that subscribe. Really helps us grow. My goal here is to educate you on cause and effect because the golf swing is so unique. It's like a fingerprint. We don't have the same golf swing as each other, so we have to learn about what is cause and effect. So I did a video a couple of days ago about the methods and swing fundamentals out there, and there are hundreds of them. So you have to be very careful on what you put in your golf swing, and it's all down to your talent, basically, and your work ethic and your timing and tempo and you name it. There's so many things at base. So let's take a look at this first swing. And if you are on here, please let me know. If not, we'll learn together. And what we can notice here is already we can see some lack of room going on and a lot of compensatory motions. I don't know. I think they have it down the line. Let's see a face on. No, we just have driver and also iron. So what we'll do is let's just look at this, eyeball it, and see. When I'm looking at students, I'm looking at their athletic motion. And I'm looking at somebody's setup. Does it look athletic? And yes and no, we can say that this is athletic or not, but we can already see that there's not a lot of room to work with, specifically down at impact. So we do see a lot of shaft humping. We see a lot of spine manipulation. And for those at home that do have some sort of access to some basic program like this, you can learn a lot by drawing some basic lines. So we're going to do Barney Purple. He's going to make his appearance once again on this video. That's your lower plane line. That's your upper plane line. So ideally, you want to give yourself a nice spacing to work with. We're all different. And this really changes the way your club works. I've noticed that the tighter that space gets, the more up and down the motion becomes. The wider that space gets, the more rotation it becomes. So it's not to say yes or no for either one of these, but it is some hit or miss when you're setting up. Spine angle line, let's draw that in our yellow. And, well, it's going to be green. And we're going to do a check from the center of your arches. This one's going to be in yellow, and we can draw that straight to the sky. So, yeah, we've seen a pretty good center check. Feet aren't quite aligned correctly. Could be a camera angle issue. So all things considered, that's why I say, yes, it looks athletic, but it just looks too tight. So if you're watching, I like your athletic setup, but we need to get you some spacing specifically in this area here. And let's zoom in so we can get a little bit tighter there. So in the spacing here, I just don't see a lot of space to work with. But let's take a look at the motion. I'm going to see as we get from that halfway point right there. So I do see a lack of turn. We're trying to turn. However, because you're not turning and because you're so close to your hands don't really have anywhere to go but out and up. So we see your hands kind of disconnecting and pulling up and away from your body. We also start to see a loss of shoulder tilt, which is a huge thing. Once you start losing the shoulder tilt, then, now all of a sudden we get too handsy and armsy and our plane becomes very steep. Ideally, you're looking to be perpendicular to that green line, and you can already see your left shoulder starting to come out of its posture. We see the spine angle, the club face opening up in relation to the spine angle. Not a big deal. I've seen the club faces all over the place. However, it's a little bit disconnected off the bat. We get to that secondary plane line. However, let's see if we get up there. And we try to get up there. So you see your body is trying to figure out, okay, how do I get to that secondary plane line? And you try your best, but we can see, and some of this is camera shift, so we're not going to zonk you on that too much, but we can see that the club doesn't get anywhere near to where the centeredness is. And this is your centeredness of your setup. So that club needs to get behind that centeredness to give you a fighting chance to come from the inside. And if you're not coming from the inside, you're going to have to do some sort of manipulation or severe rerouting. And we can see as you come on down, it's already gone. You can see that you try your best to pull that handle down, but with the lack of turn, and now you're going to turn through, everything's going to push this way, and it's just a recipe for steepness. So your body starts to feel that, right? It knows it's steep. So what is one thing to help you to flatten this out? As we've got to get that club head down in this area here. And one way you can do it is you start to lose your posture. So as we come on into impact, we can start to see our body starts to stand up. Now you're trying to fight anything to get that club to fall down below that plane line, and you do it. The club gets below the plane line, but unfortunately it gets there without a lot of turn. It gets there with a standing up motion. Now when you start to stand up, a couple things can help you get inside, and one of them is by flattening. Let's delete some of these lines here. One of them is by getting taller. It will work your hands higher, right? So when the hands get higher, the club head is going to find that equilibrium and drop in. So you found a way to come inside the slot. I wouldn't say it's the most athletic way, even though you are athletic to try and do this. I think that you are hurting yourself by doing this motion, and you run out of room, and what's left at this point, you can't turn anymore. You can see your shoulders still closed to the target. Your hips aren't open to the target. You're basically where you started. And so you only have one thing left to do is you try and turn a little bit, but watch the tilt. The tilt has to activate to get your hands out in front. So you return to a decent tilt related to your starting point, but related to your new spine angle, we see that we have that 30 degrees of tilt increase. So your shoulders are trying to tilt correctly, but you're losing the spine angle to counteract that close setup. It's very hard for you to get any weight distribution. It's hard for you to get the footing correctly. And ultimately, it's hard to retain your spine angle. Now, just keep in mind that 99.9% of golfers that you watch on television hold their spine angle. That's basically the secret to become a good ball striker. If you can hold your spine angle, it doesn't really matter what your arms and hands do, because at least they're on a static angle. But if your spine angle is always moving up or down, it's going to change your direction of your hands. It's going to change the way your club sits, and that's where compensations occur. And you can hit the ball great. I'm sure there's some times where you have this swing, everything times up correctly, and you just bomb it. And you say to yourself, I've got this. It's easy. Next swing comes up, it's not a bomb. It's probably a topper, pull, or the dreaded shank word. We're not supposed to use that, but I will use it for now. But you have to look at why are you having your misses. So when you are looking at your swing, ladies and gentlemen, watching this, don't just change your swing. I'm going to say this every week. You have to look at why your swing is moving. And if you are losing your posture, why are you losing your posture? So if this student was mine, and let's just do a quick check to see this. Yeah, you can see same here. So this isn't that bad of a setup. This is actually a better setup. And here we can see the lack of hip turn, and the arms do take over and get up. So there's definitely tightness. We're not getting a deep enough turn. We're trying to get our club to that center point. So here's the center point again, but you can see it doesn't quite get to that center point. Right there, it gets there, but then comes that rerouting, and we start to stand up again. So, hey, you make it work. I mean, I'll give you that. It's a good motion for what it is. You just need to take care of your setup. So if this was my student and we're working on some setup changes, I like the angles you have. Get your feet back here. So your feet should be starting about here, right? And then everything else, just kind of keep it the same. We don't want to increase any angles. We want to keep it about the same here. So your head will be about here. And here we go with my stick figure drawings that are pretty horrible, but you'll get the idea. So now all of a sudden you'll have a lot more room where it counts. And now you have to learn about how do we turn, because if you're not turning, there's no way for you to get your hands to go to that secondary plane line and be deep enough where it's behind your centeredness, right? That's your centeredness. That's your goal. Get that club, get the grip of the club back here behind the centeredness. Some people like to get it very low, and that's okay, but that creates some issues as well, just depending on can you hold your spine angle. So this is not much. With me, take this with a grain of salt. Trust me, you're not going to go out there and make this tiny little change and all of a sudden just stripe it. Things have to change as well. The reason you are in the position now is because when you set up, you as an athlete figured out how to hit the golf ball from that incorrect setup. I shouldn't say incorrect. I should say non-athletic motion, because you have to be athletic. You have to get rotation, and rotation provides consistency. If you don't rotate, you are not going to be consistent, because you're going to rely on these flimsy hands and arms that are like noodles and start throwing. So Hope that helps you. I don't want to get too detailed because your motion is decent for what you give it to it. Back away, keep everything the same. Give it about a month of just working, just swing. Don't think about your swing. Just get used to that and just focus on turning more. And then send me an update and let me see how that works out for you. So hope that helped you. Let's see who is up next. Okay, let's watch this one together. Is this a super slow motion? No. Okay, this looks pretty good. So same thing though. I mean, you can see how there's a closeness with the setup, but this one actually finds a way to get it done. We can see a lot of tilting down at impact, maybe a little bit too much tilt, but we'll talk about that. That's again, that lack of room at impact. Spine angle does a decent job. Weight distribution, pretty good. I don't see a lot of floundering after impact to hold your balance. What we do see is that release. So if you take a look at the release right about here, we see it's kind of very tight. So that left arm is tight to the body. Not a lot of elongation past impact, but we'll talk about why. And let's see, do we have another view here? Okay, here's a face on. Weaker grip. Okay, yeah, so there's definitely a little bit too much tilt going on here, not a lot of turn, and you can kind of see why. I'm talking about the shoulders. You can kind of see why just because of the amount of room he has given himself. So same thing that we just looked at. Let's do some Barney Purple. He's got to make his appearance, Barney Purple. So we have a pretty good area here. Let's do some back brace line and then our spine angle line. And yeah, you can definitely see the foot here, how much forward it is relative to the center. So look at that. It's well forward, probably a lot of weight in the heels. Let's see, does he transfer that weight? Yeah, it's still stuck in the heels. He tries to get over. Okay, he does a pretty good job though. But look at that. He's maintaining his posture pretty well. But this is what I'm talking about here is that excess of tilt. And that's a lot of tilt. So let's get that tilt number first and see what that is because I'm really curious on what that tilt number is. And let's do this in blue. And if for any reason the stream just all of a sudden stops, it's my computer. So log back on. It'll be up again. It's just past the impact. So 44 turns into 73. So it's 30 degrees, which is a lot of tilt. That's fine. That's within the tour average. So it just looks like a lot because there's not a lot of room. So the bend forward is a little bit too forward as well. But let's just take a look. Let's delete these lines up and let's look at the overall motion. So again, same thing here. We see some turn with the hips. Arms are trying their best to stay in that lower brace line. Lower plane line. Club is doing a really good job at finding that lower plane line though. Slightly open, which is fine. Let's change that again. And we get to the secondary plane line, which is good. Look at that. So he reaches it right in that center point, which is fine. How do we recompensate that? So it goes down and to the right. That's okay. Slightly steep. Now, how do we get that club to flatten out? He does a pretty good job. So I would imagine that this is a pretty decent player. He might run into some room. He might crash into the golf ball sometimes, leave it out to the right, or get a little bit flippy at impact. But overall, we're just looking at this motion. If this was a student of mine, this is a tough one because you can see he gets it done. There's not much to change in terms of his motion. So with this setup, and this is the opposite of what we just saw. We saw a setup before that had a lot of compensatory motions that were negating the athletic motion, where this one has good compensatory motions. So would you be doing this person any service by changing his setup? Because if you do that, it might cause issues in his golf swing. So not all swings need to be changed just because they're not exactly what we're looking for. But remember, the reason why I draw these lines is not to get you to match up correctly to these lines. I'm looking at these lines because it tells me a lot about the room you give yourself, the compensatory motions that you develop. And yes, you can develop compensatory motions that work. And it looks like this person has done that because you take a look at the top of his swing, the shoulder tilt is still perpendicular to that spine angle. It reaches that secondary plane line. It's slightly steep. We see a slight cross in the line. Club face is pretty decent to that left forearm, so it's not that big of a deal. He drops it down the slot, reroutes his hands fine. He's getting the increase of shoulder tilt, stays against the back brace line. We do see that increase of shoulder tilt here to help his hands move forward as opposed to the turning. So I wouldn't say, leave this one alone. There's not much to this. From the face on, and I don't know if this is a newer swing and this is an older swing because this looks a little bit different. Definitely see a weak grip, ball position slightly back, but it's okay. lack of turn on the way back, a lot of tilting. Great position here. I mean, look at that. Hands are right in front. Club is not going too far back. Club face is matching that left forearm. We see some type of stack and tilt. We get over to the left side again. Good drive. Look at this angle retention. Pretty decent. We start to lose a little bit of angle retention. Maybe that ball position is too far back relative to his center. So not too bad. Past impact, we see that man, look at this. Right in front of the chest still, so we don't flip it through impact. Hey, man, I'd say overall it's a pretty good swing. If anything, maybe you want to just work on some rotation on the way through. In terms of your arms, feel your arms getting a little bit further out in front so you don't feel like you're stuck. It seems like you're trying to stay in your posture so much that it affects your release and your hands don't really ride up as well. But all in all, I think that's a pretty decent swing. So the hard thing about this is I don't know their stories. I don't know what their goals are. I don't know what their misses are. But if this is just a educational thing, what you can take from this is just because it doesn't look good doesn't mean it's not a good swing. So good job here. Let me know if you would like further details, if you're on this chat or if you're watching this later. If you do, send me an email and just tell me what your issues are, what your misses are, because it comes down to misses. Golf, the handicap system, as flawed as it is, only registers your best 1 out of every 4 rounds. So it's not necessarily means you're going to go out and shoot scratch. If you're a scratch, it means 1 out of every 4 rounds, you're going to shoot around 72 to 75. What the handicap system represents is your misses. How well do you miss the ball? So if this person is a 7 handicap, we'd have to figure out, okay, what is his misses? And if he wants to get to a 2 handicap, how are his misses on his full swing affecting 5 shots? Or is it his short game? Is it his course management? Is it his thought process? Is it his putting? So just remember that. Let's see who's next. And this one, we have multiple videos, and this comes from Larry. So Larry, hope you're on here. Hope you're gonna enjoy this. Let's zoom in. Let's just take a look because we got a couple of these. Larry sent this to me earlier, but I remember when I saw his email, I was like, I know I've seen this before, and he sent me 2 others. So this is great. We've got face on with the iron, face on with the driver. We got a down the line with an iron and a down the line with the driver. So what we're going to do is let's look at the face on with the iron. Let's take a look at some cause and effects here. Now, while this is playing, let me read what he said here. Gentleman in his 60s, plays 5 times a week, mostly walking, which is great. Don't have any physical issues other than age. And yes, I feel you there. Some days I wake up, I feel like I'm over 100. My distance loss started last fall after a lesson with somebody that tried to teach me to push my upper body forward in the downswing. Now, Larry, if you're on here, if you can help me. Hey, Larry, what's up? Thanks for joining us. Larry, if you can just help me get this understanding. By pushing your upper body forward, does that mean he's trying to get your weight distribution to your left foot? Or does that mean he's trying to keep you in your spine angle by keeping your chest more over the ball? If you could answer that, I'll appreciate that. He feels that it creates a reverse spine angle. In his opinion, it's killing his distance and needs some secondary opinion. Thank you as well, Larry. Appreciate that. While he answers that for me, let's just take a look at his cause and effect here. Weight distribution on the left foot was the goal. Okay. Yeah, I understand why. So hopefully we can make some sense of this too, because I'm in agreement with him. But I think it's important for you to understand why. So let's do this. Let's set this up. So we're going to try. And remember, this is just eyeballing it. So don't get too hard on me with these lines. Okay, so we're going to try your best to run this through right about there. Okay, and what we're going to do is let's draw a circle right about here. Okay, now remember, this is for your irons, right? So you can see your shoulder tilt is warranting almost a driver swing where your hand path is going to be higher after impact. So the hand path will work its way up as you strike it, right? Now let's draw with this forward press. And I'm assuming you watch my videos, Larry, and you understand my philosophy on forward pressing. It has to be done with a very careful intention and knowing how to forward press correctly, because what we're doing is we're creating 2 different motions in the golf swing. you're creating two circles. Now, the best in the world can get away with it because they have figured out a way to do it because they hold their spine angle is the most important thing, but also because they have a lot of talent. So let's draw a line here perpendicular to where that golf ball is. I'm going to try and keep it the same level as that one. Okay, again, this is eyeballing it. Okay, so don't get so hard on me here. And we're going to draw this circle. Okay, so we can see now we have two circles in your golf swing from this point of view. One is your spine angle, which has to do with your shoulder tilt, and the other is your forward press. Now, you notice how these two don't match up. So at some point in your golf swing, you are going to have to try and match these up. So there's two ways for you to match this up. Number one, which is a harder way, is you are going to have to figure out how to get this green line to fall back. Now, there's two ways to do this. You can increase your shoulder tilt, which will then move your hands ahead slightly, and then you can throw your hands to release that club, and all of a sudden now you have a tilty and a throwy at impact to catch these two things up. Number two is you can figure out how to move your center closer to the target. So now these two X's will reach each other and you'll be able to kind of match up those two circles. Hope you're with me here. So how we figure this out is we're going to draw in Barney Purple. We're going to draw a line, a straight line where your center of your chest is. And we can see you do a great job of starting with the center of your chest over that golf ball. That's fine. That forward press, however, creates some issues because when you forward press, there's two ways to forward press. You can turn to forward press or you can tilt to forward press. And you've elected to tilt. Now, the problem with tilting is now your hands at impact, if you remain where you are and you kind of go through your motions, we know we increase tilt at impact. So now you're going to increase tilt even more. So you're going to hit that ground before the golf ball. So now you have to get going left. So we're going to look at your motions on the way back, and then we're going to look at your motion on the way through. Now watch the center of your chest. You see how you start to creep over to the left side. So right before you strike the golf ball, here is your new center. It has moved ahead. And what is it trying to do is it's trying to make up the lack, trying to make up this room here. So you've probably cut that room in half. Now, the problem is if we go just at impact, we can see now we've also increased our tilt. So we're going to draw this one. What color can we use? It's not confusing. So we got the red now. So we're going to draw the tilt. So now you've increased the tilt and your hands are keeping up with that increase of tilt. Great. Now we have another problem. The forward left lean wasn't enough to accommodate that tilt. So what he is trying to probably do for you is not only get your left lean forward, but to level your shoulders out because now they're too tilty. And what happens is your hand path now is definitely after impact going to want to move up because it's just a circle unless you have arms like Gumby that can just keep stretching. But what you tend to do is watch your motion after impact. Notice how you try to stay down. See how your head stays down and you're trying to reach about. You're trying to elongate those hands as long as you can to try and get them outside of that circle because they're fighting that tilt. So now I know that you probably hit the occasional one very heavy because maybe you didn't move over enough. So what he's trying to do is get you to move your upper body over and level your shoulder tilt. Left shoulder higher to impact is the feel you want. Depends. Left shoulder higher to impact is good for a driver, but you have to think about left shoulder. You want to feel like the left shoulder is leveling out. So not a lot of tilt because when you tilt, your hands all of a sudden jump ahead and they're moving up. And plus you hit the small ball before the big ball because you have a secondary problem now. Now let's see. Hopefully you can get that. Screenshot that because I'm about to erase all those lines or we can watch this again. So what's going to happen now is because let's look at the ball position relative to your center. So this is where you started, right? It's at the center. As you get down into impact, this is your center. Notice what's happened to your ball position. Your ball position now has moved 2 golf balls behind where it started. Now, the problem with that is you have to throw your hands now to accommodate that. You have to throw and get rid of some of this lag to get that golf ball because it's essentially moved 2 golf balls back. So what he's trying to get you to do is lean forward and level out your shoulders. But the problem with that is you now moved your ball position further back. So even if you get your left shoulders to level out and lean left, your ball position shifted so far back that you have to throw your hands and you lose your lag. So all of a sudden, it doesn't matter how far left you go, the further left you go, the more you have to throw your hands to reach that golf ball. So they kind of counterintuitive. They kind of work against each other. So I understand what he was trying to do, but at the same time, if you do that correctly, you're going to throw your hands. And there comes some ball contact issues. And there comes a lot of issues with distance loss because you're losing your angular momentum. And the goal is to retain that. So my recommendation from this face on, because I still want to look at you down the line, I think that's a good thing to learn from. Your face on is we've got to get you in a more neutral setup. And I know it seems like you love to play more. And it seems like you play 5 times a week. I don't know how many times you practice. When I play a lot, my fundamentals get shot out because I just focus on hitting the ball and playing. I start to get lazy with my setup. Your setup is a mess. Yeah, that explains it. And I don't know if it's because you play a lot more. When I have students that all they do is practice a lot, it's great. They get their setup correctly done. Their foundations are a lot better, but their scoring ability falls off a cliff because they're not playing golf. So it's this combination. Do you practice every day after playing? How long do you practice every day? How many golf balls do you hit? That's a good question to ask too. So it's this combination of just understanding, okay, maybe I don't need to play as much this week while I work on things. And then once we get my ball striking better, now let me go and play and enjoy myself until the wheels fall off. Again, it's this constant putting back the wheels and letting them fall off and then putting it back in 50 to 60 a day. How long does it take you to hit 50 to 60 balls a day? And this is going to be the answer that helps explain everything. So for you, I would just focus on getting a more natural setup. I wouldn't try this 4 press. If you want to, so there's 2 ways to do this. If you like your setup, if you like the way it feels, just do me a favor, move that ball position a little bit left. So 2 golf balls left. And then you can try to get that lean left and you might not suffer with throwing the lag. Number 2 option is if you want to change your setup, you've got to get your setup more neutral. So what I mean is level these shoulders out so they're not as tilted, and then your hands can just kind of drop slightly ahead, and the golf ball can be right about there. Let's get you back to setup here. So you want to avoid forward pressing. So that's your 2 options. Either change the ball position, 2 golf balls left, and keep swinging like you're doing, and go left like he wants you to work on, and you'll be able to have enough room to hold your angles, or change your setup. But then the problem is once you change your setup, all the sequencing after the setup might get shot. So one's more frustrating. The correct way, if this is my students, the correct way is to change your setup and address your swing fundamentals. That's the long way. That's the frustrating way. And I'm going to tell you this right now, Larry, if you like to play golf and you enjoy playing golf, you do this long way, you're probably not going to enjoy golf for about 6 months because you probably hit the ball pretty bad and you need somebody to keep an eye on you. Number 2 is a quicker fix. It's a Band-Aid fix, but remember, Band-Aids do fall off and it'll create some other issues. Let me catch up here. So you take 45 minutes to hit 50, 60 a day. That's about 1 a minute. I don't like it at all. Bad habit to set up like this. I like it to be more neutral. Okay, good. So hopefully you're in agreement with me. 50 golf balls. So my biggest challenge for my students, if I have an hour-long class, I give my student 10 golf balls. I say, you've got 1 hour to hit these 10 golf balls. How are you going to hit them? Because to me, there's a reason why I called the Lion Golf Academy the Lion Golf Academy. Besides, it was my mother's favorite animal, and she passed away of cancer. So I've decided what a better way to honor her. But it has to do with taming your lions. Okay, so think about this. Anybody watching, this is how you practice correctly. There's dry swings and there's real swings. Real swings with a golf ball. No matter how you feel you're swinging, with a real swing, you're always going to swing like your old self. With dry swings, at least you have time to make your changes, and you're probably going to swing like your new self. So every time you take a golf ball swing, no matter what you feel like you're doing, I guarantee you, 99% of the time, you're swinging like your old self. So if you're hitting 50 to 60 golf balls a day, and you're thinking that you're swinging a little bit differently, you're probably not, because your neurological system is taking over as soon as it sees that golf ball. And I'll tell you why. So let's say I walk around with my heels. My heels go down first, and that's just how I walk. But for whatever reason, I want to learn how to walk with my toes down first. And it seems a little weird, but I'm just going to walk like that. It takes a lot of thought because that's not very comfortable. But after 3 or 4 months of just walking with my toes down first, it might feel a bit more natural. So, hey, I've got this. But while I'm walking with my toes down first, if there's a lion that's hiding behind a bush and he jumps out and he chases me, how do you think I'm going to run away? I guarantee you, I'm not running away with my toes down first. I'm going back to my neurological heels down. I'm running as fast as I can. Golf balls are your lions. They're always going to pull out that old neurological system. And your job is to retrain that old neurological system. And you can only do it with dry swings that are boring, that are slow, that are purposeful. Real golf ball swings, it is very, very hard. It takes you 10 times as long because every golf ball you put in your neurological system, it takes 2 to 3 golf balls to unteach that move. Now, I don't know how long you've been playing. I don't know how many golf balls you've struck in your life, but you can do the math. The more you practice incorrectly, the more you're going to have to undo later on. So I'm going to challenge you, Larry. I want you to do an hour after every round of golf, and I want you to take 10 golf ball swings. In between golf ball swings, I want you to do 10 slow, purposeful swings with your setup. It is very boring. I get that. But it's, trust me, you will notice the differences so much quicker. And with somebody that likes to play a lot and practice a lot, I'm going to give that recommendation to you. And hopefully this front view makes sense. But let's look at the down line, because I think we've got to take a look at this down the line and figure out what's going on. And let's see this one here. Okay, this is a good one here. Let me see it. Give me a sec here. Just want to make sure we do a good one where we can help it. Okay, you can see that. Yeah, okay. So let's do the driver. I assume that's driver. By the way, Larry is 6'5", so big man. Larry, since you're on, do you have custom clubs? Are your clubs long at all? Have you had them checked? 6'5", and obviously it's not necessarily your height. It has to do with your arm length ratio, because I've had students that are 6'5" and have gorilla arms and actually need shorter clubs. So it really depends on arm length. But just curious if you can help answer that while I draw these famous lines. Barney Purple going right through you. 1 inch longer, 1 up. Okay. All right. Let's do some spine angle work here. And we'll zoom in a little bit so it's not so far away here. Okay. Yeah, I've been fit. Good. I recommend keep getting fit. Yeah, thanks, Eric. Yeah, I hear you. Couldn't agree more with this approach when practicing with a purpose. 10 or 20 balls may be effective and take more time than hitting 100. Bingo. That's exactly it. And you look at the best in the world. I mean, when they're out there practicing, I don't know if you've ever gone to a tour event and you watch them warm up on the range. They don't spend a lot of time on the range. I mean, they spend a lot of time chipping and putting because that's where it is. And they might spend more time on their 75-yard shot. You know, they're going to choose that one shot to try and score with. But they're not out there banging a bunch of balls trying to work on their swing. They're just getting feel at that point. Okay, so what we're going to do is take a look at the centeredness. So I think, Larry, this is something I want you to take note on too, is where your centeredness is. So you can see it's a little bit crooked here. Now, this could be a camera angle, but you can see the feet are kind of not supporting the centeredness exactly. You can see your left foot supporting the front, the right foot supporting the back. You do probably feel centered because they offset each other, but there is going to be some issues here because I want you to take a look. We're going to look at the center of your hip joint, right, which is kind of where that green line is on the back. You try to be closed. Okay, so let's just take a look because it does play a little part. And what we're going to do is look at the way you take the club back. Your arms try to do a good job of getting that down on the lower plane line. However, at the top of your swing here, you can see this little bit of extra lift here. You come out of your posture to gain your arm position to go back. Now, I know that feels very powerful. I know that's how you can generate some distance, but we start to lose some posture. And this is the biggest thing I want you to get across is try not to sacrifice length for posture, because posture will always give you length, but length that sacrifices posture won't necessarily give you length. It might actually destroy some things, if that makes sense. Because already we can see now we have a position where we've stood out of our posture. We've lost the shoulder tilt relationship with the initial setup. We had to rotate. We had to lift our left leg to get that rotation. So that's one of my questions to you was, do you feel like maybe you're not you can't turn enough? Maybe there's some issues with your hip flexors. Maybe there's some issues with your hamstrings. I'm not sure. Have you been TPI tested? Have they done a range of motion on you? Because that can really help you as well. If not, maybe you just get into that position because you feel like the club needs to get up there. It doesn't really. If you can get to that position with your turn, there is about all you really need with your turn. There's plenty of shoulder turn. The club can work its way up higher. You can get your arms to disconnect slightly here. I'd rather see them disconnect here than disconnect up here to steal that length by you coming out of your posture. But just keep that in mind. So what we're going to do is leave that yellow line to show you where your new spine angle is. And then we come on down. Now we're staying in that new spine angle. Left foot raised, don't get the club back. It is a feel that is wrong. Left foot raised to get the, yeah. So I want to go ahead and change stuff. This is just education. You'll have to decide what makes more sense for you based on what we talk about here. But you can take a look now. You're staying in your yellow new spine angle, right? So now you're going to be tilting around that new spine angle. Now, because you stood up, your hands now, we can take a look at your triangle here. So let's draw your triangle. So your triangle does a decent job of getting to that centeredness, right? So you can see your hands get to that center. It's pretty good. Now, ideally, where that triangle is, that's kind of where you want to see that first motion down. But because you've stood up, you've enacted more turn, you're going to have to turn back to make up that turn. So now we start turning right away, and our hand path is moving right of that triangle. Anytime it's going right, now you're steep. And so now we got some steepness issues. And you, as a 6'5" athlete, has kind of figured this out and said, okay, how can I flatten this out? Now to flatten it out, we start sliding and we start standing up even more. So as we strike the golf ball, we can see we're still in that yellow spine angle. Our hands are moving away. And remember, just like that first video we saw, anytime you start standing up at impact, what happens? It has to do with rotation. If you look at a figure skater, when they start spinning, the tighter they pull their arms in, the faster they spin. Because as you spin, things work around to the center. So your center of the rotation, as we draw a line here and a line here, if you start standing up and spinning, because now you have to rotate more because you rotate too far back, where your hand's going to work, they're going to work to that center of the two lines. So your hands are working outward instead of kind of working down and out. So you're fighting a lot of, I don't know if that's centrifugal or centripetal, one of those. I know that one of them works its way out. Whichever one that is, that's what you're fighting. And now we know from the face on, you're probably trying to slide left, which moves the ball position back as well. So we see a lot of spine angle loss, and we see the hands have to get really involved to try and save that golf swing. And we see the hand path exiting very high. You make it work. There's just a lot of little things that you kind of have to decide what's more important. I am too steep. Yeah, and hopefully you can see why you're too steep. Now, keep in mind, how are your misses? Is it worth trying to reinvent your swing if you don't miss it that much? What's your handicap, Larry, if you can let me know? And your misses, do you miss them left? Do you miss them right? Like, what is your dispersion? Are they short and long? And while he gets back to me, this is just for anybody watching this. Before you start messing with your swing, make sure you look at your cause and effect. Once you get your cause and effect, now you have to look at the time investing that it's going to take for you to change any part of your swing. The more you've been a golfer, the harder it's going to be, obviously, because you have more neurological systems. Okay, so he's a 5 handicap. Hit a lot of fairways, 11 to 12. Okay, but he's not long. And, honestly, 12 fairways, that's almost tour average, Larry. That's pretty decent, right? So they hit about 12 fairways around. And 12 to 14 is what they hit. And they usually hit about 12 greens in regulation. How many greens do you hit, Larry, in regulation? Because being a 5 handicap, you can see he makes it work. And is it going to be worth your time and effort to try and get a little bit of distance at the sacrifice of your feel? And you can tell he plays 5 days a week because this is a very feel-oriented person. I would almost guarantee you that if Larry decided, hey, I'm going to take 2 or 3 weeks off, it's going to be a challenge for him to get back into it. 8 to 11 greens, but only hit 200 in air off the tee. Okay. Yeah, 200's a man of your size, you're looking at least 230. I mean, even as you age, you should be able to generate some club head speed. So I would imagine, let's see if we can see a face on here. Do we have a face on driver? We do. Oh yeah, you can see. Okay, so this is a good thing for you to see here, Larry. So your setup again, it's really going to help. Hey man, don't say it's pitiful. I wish at 67 years old I'd be playing 5 days a week. You're ahead of the game, trust me. So if you take a look here, we're going to look at where your relationship of your hands are connected to your shoulders. It looks really good. That is where your ball position needs to be. I'll tell you what, if you just make that simple change, keep everything the same, just get that ball position up and don't forward press, it's going to make the world of difference for you. Because if you take a look at your impact here, you still have the same motions that we talked about on the down the line with the face on with the irons, where you start to move a lot because you get that forward press. Watch the centeredness as you go into impact. So your whole body's going left, and as you strike it, look at this. Now look at your centeredness. It has moved how many golf balls? Look at it's moved where it should be. So look at your setup. If your setup was that green line, your centeredness was still behind the golf ball. Now you can take a look here. Your golf ball's moved back to your right shoulder. It's no wonder you have to let go of some of this lag. Your lag's looking pretty good here. There is a pretty decent angle. That's, it's probably already starting to release because your brain's saying, man, I got to hit that ball. I better get going now. But even if you can retain that angle and carry it down a couple more frames, because right at impact here, this club should be there and your hands should be more out in front, which they will be if that golf ball is, what is that, 4 golf balls over? Because take a look at where you strike it right there. If you strike it here, I mean, now you're forward pressed, right? This is where your hands would be. You still got a slight forward press, but your hands are still moving up. So a simple change, Larry, this is good news for you. The driver, yeah, no wonder you steep, exactly. So this is a huge thing, is always just look at your GASP, your grip, your alignment. Your grip looks good. I could see both V's point to the center, so that looks fine. Alignment, I know you said you like to start a little bit close with your feet. That's fine. As long as it doesn't affect your path, that's okay. Check your turn though, because sometimes when we close our hips, we start adding more turn. But your ball position and aim are the 2 biggest disruptors of golf swings. Again, I'm going to tell you the best in the world. When we're going to watch Larry swing when I preach on. So when we look at the best in the world, when they miss a shot, what's the first thing they do? They don't do any of this. They stand behind and they look at where's my divot pointing. And then they maybe put a club down to see where they're aiming. They're checking their aim, because if your aim is off at that level, they're going to find a way to compensate that aim. Then they start looking at ball position. Where is it related to my center? Or for them, where is it related to their hand press? Wherever they're working on. But you have to look at your ball position and your alignment first. Get that squared away. Make it so you stay behind the ball at impact. You can still keep all your motions that you have here, but if you move that ball position over 4 or 5 golf balls and just keep everything the same, including your setup, you're going to love life, Larry. You're going to get probably 15, 20 yards right off the bat, because you're going to not be as steep. You're probably going to decrease the spin. You probably have a lot of spin. Your launch angle is probably way too, you're coming down. Your attack angle is probably too steep. So you're going to flatten out the attack angle. You're going to help launch that golf ball. So how could I change my position with irons? Let's take a look at your irons real quick. Same sort of thing. Level, if you want to do it correctly, Larry, level these shoulders out. So this forward press, this forward press is what's getting you that tilt. Because if you level your shoulders out, they're going to be slightly down, because your right hand's always lower than your left, right? Because you're gripping right hand low. But get that, just level them out. You want to just a slight right shoulder down, which will bring your hands in a similar position, but then your ball position needs to be right there. So we're just pulling you back. You're pulling you back to center. And what that'll do is it'll line up all of a sudden your circles. That will be your arm circle, 90 degrees based on this line here. And then we'll also match your shoulder tilt circle, because now your shoulder tilt will be closer. So if you draw I should have did this the other way. I took a wrong way of doing this. Take the long way. So there's kind of where your shoulders are. So you can see that at least your circles will be a little bit closer to each other, right? So now at least you don't have to get this lateral shift as much, and you can rely on just your natural tilt to get your hands to press at impact. So try not to manufacture forward press unless you are, one of these gifted athletes out there. And that's why I don't really like to compare average golfers to professional athletes, because I can find you a dozen professional PGA, LPGA, even top amateurs that are NCAA division that do forward press, and they find a way to make it work because they compensate correctly. However, to compensate a forward press, you need a lot of body manipulation. You need a lot of talent. And I hate to break it to you, but we're not on TV for a reason. We don't have the ability to compensate our body. We just have the ability to swing as best as we can. And I like to keep things simple. So give that a try, Larry. Hopefully that helps you. Try it for a month. Don't rush into this. Try and do that practice routine that I recommended to you at the start of your videos. And I think you'll see some changes right away. Immediately, you'll notice a huge jump on your driver. I mean, that would just be, do me a favor, do that tomorrow if you can. Just do that driver change, ball position up 4 or 5 golf ball position. Just swing normally. Don't lean for that golf ball. Trust it and just turn, and you'll notice it right away. So hopefully that helps you. We got one more here, and this one I just reached out to because I saw this setup, and we're going to take a look at this because this is another one of those swings where it's a very unusual setup. But you see what happened? Hit the ball right down the pipe. So it doesn't necessarily mean because it's an unusual setup we have to change it. But what we might start to do is look for potential issues that he might come across when he starts to develop this game, and also some potential injuries as he ages. Because anytime I see somebody with straight legs and a very bent over posture, that brings alarms to me because of the amount of tilting needed to maintain that. And when you start to tilt the shoulders too much, that puts excess pressure on your back, specifically the lumbar region. Anytime you have pressure on your lumbar region that's not designed to tilt, it's going to start to pop. And I've seen a lot of kids nowadays with this. So I know this camera's a little bit off, but we can make do with it, and we'll get our favorite Barney Purple. And, nobody's come up with a better name for a green. So that's going to be Mean Green for now, and then somebody can come up with a better name. So there's Mean Green. And what we can see here is a huge amount of gap between the lower plane line and the upper plane line. So ideally, when I see that huge amount of gap, we see a very rotational motion, as opposed to when it gets very tight, we see a more up and down motion. And obviously, because we have a big forward bend. So this forward bend, to me, looks a little bit too much. We can see the toe kind of sticking up in the air. But we're going to take a look and find a way to see how he makes this work, because it's pretty impressive. So we see that the left knee buckles in, the right knee straightens up. But that's obviously because it's straight up at impact. But let's take a look at so there's the centeredness check. Centeredness is pretty close for that exaggerated setup. As we take that club back, the arms do a pretty good job of staying on that lower plane line. He gets a pretty good job of getting to the top plane line. So we can see this is an athlete that's trying to find a way to make this work. We can see a slight increase of shoulder tilt, so that left shoulder does come up, and that could cause some issues with the way you redirect yourself. But let's take a look at how much tilt he actually has, the difference. So we'll start there. Let's pull this number out, and let's go blue. We're going to do 37, and right at impact, we see 1 frame past impact. It should be 67 or so. There's 61. So we do lose a little bit of tilting. 25 degrees, not bad. Obviously, with this extreme bend forward, to get him to tilt more, it will do him disservice. It'll start to hurt his body. So he finds a way to make it work. He doesn't necessarily lose spine angle, which is really impressive. We do see a slight increase, but if you take a look, that's where his impact was. So he does compress into the golf ball right there, and then he kind of stands up a little bit. So we do see a slight increase of spine angle, but this has to do with the way he's setting up. So I think he does a really good job with what he's given himself. But we're going to take a look at the centeredness of this hip joint, okay? And we're going to take a look at that hip joint at impact. So right there. So this is a cool thing about golf swings, is what they typically do everybody does, is right when your knees are pointing at your target in your downswing. If we take a look at where the hip joint is, it typically tries to find, if we draw a straight line, typically tries to find the center of your feet. Now we can see that it is probably in the center. It would like to be in the arches of the heels, but you can see that right foot is back. So if this right foot was here, the arches of the heels would be there. So it always tries to find the arches of the heels if your feet are pointing in the same direction as your knees. Now we have to probably take it back slightly there because this is where his feet line is and his knees. So it's in between these two frames. But you can see the center of the hips on this frame here is trying to find that. So just keep that in mind because that changes everything. Because as he gets his centeredness more towards the golf ball, because the hips are trying to find that center, what happens is he loses a little bit more impact area and he has to stand up to get out of his way according to where he started. So we do see a little bit of this compensatory motion. My main concern for him as he gets a little bit older, if he sticks with this motion, is the amount of pressure on that lower lumbar. So the back is a very unusual thing. The thoracic region is responsible for rotation. So it can rotate about 60 degrees by itself. The lumbar region can rotate about, depends on your synovial fluid, but about 20 to 30 degrees. So if you put your position, you can see how much he has to turn. If you put your back in a position where it has to turn and tilt, a lot of pressure is going to start to build in this lower back. It's not supposed to turn. So now all of a sudden it's going to turn too much. And what happens when you get older? Your back starts to weaken up. That's why the lower back is the number one injury in golf, followed by the wrists because of just too much rotation. Johnny Miller, ask Johnny Miller how his back is doing. It's not a very good thing. And if you take a look at Johnny Miller's impact position, reverse C, a lot of pressure on that lumbar region. So to help him in his future, what I would do is I would take this impact position, which he is doing a pretty good job, and I would build his setup like that. So if this was his impact position, we would look more at taking his setup with a little taller and a little bit of knee bend. That would be his setup. All right, there's my stick figures. Arms back down to here. Okay, so that's what I would try to emulate. And we go back to the beginning, we can see where he is there. So that would just help him in the long term. I don't know if he's a new golfer. I don't know if he's not watching this or if he will watch it when he watches it later. But I think that's really going to help him develop and also protect his body. So you want to keep an eye out for that too. I know that most of my viewers don't worry about getting older. They're probably enjoying their time right now, their retirement. But we do have some viewers that are younger. And obviously, I was young at one point, and I can't get into positions I used to, and my body suffers too. I have a lower back problem just for this reason. So just keep an eye out. Great swing, though. You find a way to make it work. It's very athletic, very powerful. I'd say maybe a little bit too muscular. Maybe loosen up, but definitely start addressing your setup. Stand a little bit closer, a little bit taller. Take that pressure off your lower back. But I hope that helps you. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I know we're running into almost an hour here, so I hope for those that did watch me for the full hour, appreciate your support. If you want to appear on one of these, and I think, let me see, who did I get it from? Andy, if you're watching, Andy Guyen. I received your email just shortly. I was already set up for this live stream. I will get you next Sunday. Great videos, by the way. Great information. You laid down all the stuff I need. So if anybody is interested in preparing a next week's video, send me a down the line face on to info@liongolfacademy.com or tony@liongolfacademy.com. Make sure it's face on down the line. Give me some information about your past history, your injuries, what you're working on, your misses. That way it can at least help me diagnose some stuff to look for. But Andy, you'll be on next week. So if you're watching, appreciate your support. Thank you, everybody, for supporting us. If you do like this, hit that like, share, subscribe. Really helps us grow. And if you know somebody else that might be interested in watching this just for education, remember, no money back guarantee. It's free education. Take it or leave it. It's just another cool way to look at the golf swing. So hope that helps you. I'll see you guys next time. Fairways and greens. Go play some golf, but also practice correctly.